Welcome back to my channel. I'm Lea Kaufman from LK Intelligent Movement, and it is my honor today to have with me the Dr. Stephen Porges, who is, as you know, a distinguished scientist in different universities, and he is the creator of the Polyvagal Theory that is changing the way we understand emotions, attachment, communication, and self-regulation. This theory has been a fundamental transformation in our understanding of trauma, and today I have the pleasure of being talking with Stephen Porges about his theory. Our thesis in this Mysterios is that we need to change our perception of ourselves to be able to have a positive impact in the world. And you talk about how neuroceptions precede perceptions and how these also connect with our mind state. Yeah. So how can you make these links between neuroceptions, perceptions, and how we conduct ourselves in the world?
Well, polyvagal theory puts the sense of our nervous system in between our perception or experience or our consciousness and the events in the world. So what polyvagal theory talks about, it really says that we have a neurophysiological platform in which we literally reside. It can change, but when we're on that platform, we have a bias towards how we see the world. We may see it as accessible and welcoming, or we may see it as dangerous and threatening. So neuroception is really this neural circuit that detects safety and risk without awareness. Now, the interesting part of neuroception is that we're not aware of the cues that trigger these physiological state changes. So we can go into a room and there could be certain cues that may remind us of something that happened that we were embarrassed about or we got injured, and we walk into the room and we get this physiological response, and we're almost clueless about where that came from. So what polyvagal theory really emphasizes is that neuroception provides the triggers or the mechanism that move us into different physiological states. We're not aware of the triggers, but we are aware of those physiological state changes. So when we get those physiological state changes, we become very creative. We try to figure out, why is it that I feel irritable? Why is it that I'm reactive? Do I not like you? Do I not like the environment? So we create a narrative. Sometimes the narrative is very self-directed, where we say, I feel very bad about myself, and that's why I can't function in this room. But all this lacks the honoring and respecting of our body's responses, which are really on a reflexive and adaptive level that we have in our nervous system from our evolutionary heritage.
Great, amazing. So this story that we tell ourselves about the world and about ourselves and the others, it's all based in these neuroceptions.
Yeah.
Not all, of course, but...
Yeah. But we can think about what's happening in the world today in terms of the pandemic. The pandemic is a threat to our nervous system, it's a threat to our survival, and our bodies react to it. And our body gets into a state of more defensiveness, more hypervigilance. Now, we may not think we're in that state, but someone might say something to us and suddenly we become very reactive and irritable to that person. We think that person is outwardly trying to irritate us or make us feel uncomfortable, when the person might have a much more unbiased, more neutral, but may even try to be poking a humorous statement to us at that point, and we may be, in a sense, hyper-reactive to that.
Great. And this leads us to my next question about co-regulation and how we are with each other and how co-regulation precedes self-regulation. And I think there is a lot out there about how we can self-regulate and become more independent and more autonomous, but this is a very important piece.
There's a paradox in our culture where we think that people should be all about self-regulatory, where we should basically inhibit some of these intuitive or reflexive desires to interact, to play, to hug, to be in proximity with another, because it gets in the way of doing our work. So we create a hierarchy that says that that's play and the other thing is work, and we shouldn't play. Play is a disruptor. But our evolutionary history as mammals is that we have co-regulated, I mean, we've connected with others to regulate our physiology. Again, we can think about the pandemic as really creating this paradoxical challenge to our nervous system. One, we're under threat, but how have humans, through their own evolutionary history, regulate their feelings of threat or feelings of lack of safety? And that is to be in the presence of a co-regulatory, someone that they trusted, someone that they felt safe with, so that they could either hug or talk things out and feel sufficiently safe to turn off their defenses. But part of the pandemic, I say the impact of the pandemic, is that we social distance. So we no longer have as a resource the ability to co-regulate with that many people. And for many of us who see ourselves as co-regulators by our own nature, we want to reach out and we want to engage people, because not only do we want to regulate who we are, we want to help regulate others and keep them calmer and bring them into a world of spontaneously social engaging and co-regulation.
We were talking about co-regulation and how this also changed the way we see ourselves. The thing that you just said, right? That our presence, it's also a way to help others. Many times we think that we need to do something, and it's just this connection and this presence that triggers something in the nervous system of our partner or companion or friend or whoever we are with.
Yeah, you're describing the power of being present with another, which is really an act of co-regulation. And we often hear terms like being present when we're talking about therapies or people who want to be compassionate. And so our bodies need to connect and co-regulate, and the person just being present, not even speaking, but in listening with intent, makes us feel that the other person is in our psychological space, and that forms a basis for co-regulation. If the person who we're talking to says, I have to fix it so that you're okay, it's not going to work. We're still going to feel mobilized. But we have a great need to be witnessed, to be heard, to have our voices heard and acknowledged. And some of the political unrest going on in the United States is all about voices not being heard. And as voices are heard, it diffuses the reactivity and the hostility. People want to be heard. They want to be connected to others. So this act of co-regulation also includes, in a sense, just being present with another.
Perfect. Yeah, so important. Thank you. So in this context that you are living now in the United States also, but how do you imagine in some way that we can create beyond trauma and beyond drama, if we can go beyond this survival logic, and then what will be like our next step, and if it's even that's even possible?
Well, everything is possible because we're functionally wired to be a social species, and that we're actually inhibiting or turning off the spontaneous capacity that we have to connect and to love and to trust others, because we're always being warned that you can't trust people, you're going to get hurt. So part of our educational system, part of the education of all the institutions, whether they're universities or parenting or religion, are all about a degree of fear, a degree of being injured or not trusting others. So you become an adult, you're a child who is doing this to the world, and rapidly the child learns, oh, this is a dangerous place, and I'm vulnerable, I'm small. And then as the child grows up, the child keeps in their mind the template of vulnerability. And vulnerability often becomes even a greater, motivator, because people trust and then they're injured by people with whom they trust. So the educational model has to say that the world is not all about threat and removing of threat. It's about removing a threat is good, but we have to give it something else on top of that. We have to give it the cues of safety, the cues of trust, and cues of trust that are respected and honored. Really, that's what our bodies want. Our bodies want to feel safe in the arms of another, but not in everyone's arms, but in the arms of another whom they will feel safe with. So you can have specificity with whom you feel safe, but you need opportunities to feel safe.
You talk about this vagal break, right? So when we are starting to feel that we are unsafe and we start to apply these different activities and soft transitions that allow us to do this break mechanism.
The vagal brake is a neural mechanism through which our nervous system turns off our defenses. And it can do this in a very rapid way. You can see this in a baby who might be crying and the mother just sings a lullaby to the baby and the tears appear to dry up. So there's something that is occurring almost instantaneously that takes the baby out of a defensive mode, a fearful defensive mode, to a very available and trusting mode. And that's where the vagal brake comes on. It is to really think about it. We have a heart, and the heart without a vagal brake on it will beat between 90 and 120 beats per minute. But most of our baseline heart rates are in the, let's say, 60s to 80. So we walk around with a vagal brake on, and what that does is that we can pull that brake off, and now our heart rate can immediately get up to like 90 beats per minute. And we can walk around, and then when we sit down, the brake comes back on. If we don't have a good brake, walking around can even destabilize us. And you probably know people, or many other people watching this will know people who, if they are in any form of physical activity, they change their personality. Their personality loses an ability to stay calm because their vagal brake is very inefficient and not well. It's basically the threshold to pull it off is very low, and the ability to re-engage it is not well developed.
Amazing. And we can learn that, and we can start to apply that.
We can learn it, and one of the basic ways that people learn it from youth is play. Play is movement and mobilization with many of the features of a fight and flight and aggression, but it has one thing on top of it. It maintains social communication of face and voice, and that becomes play. So what we're doing is we're moving with the cues of aggression, but we're not aggressive because we're containing it through the vagal brake, through cues of friendship and trust.
I would like to know if you could imagine, if everyone can start to apply these breaks, how will it be?
I think what you're asking, what would the world be like if people were co-regulators and had efficient, effective vagal brakes? Then people could be who they are. And this is really what my metaphor would be. I would say that most people at their core are beautiful. As a species, we are a loving species. It's when we become defensive that our bodies react and we misinterpret others. So under states of fear, we are not who we could become. So the issue is we have to mitigate those feelings of threat to enable what it is to be a human. And in the world of trauma, we really learn what it is to be a human, not because people who survive trauma have all the attributes of being human. It's because the experience of surviving trauma has removed some of these attributes from their repertoire of behavior and socialization. So they know that their bodies will react to proximity, yet their intentions, they want to be hugged, they want to have relationships, but their bodies say, as they try to engage someone, their body is telling them it's too dangerous. So they know what has been lost. The other things that are lost are purpose in life, desire to do things, this intrinsic motivation to create and to discover. when we live a world of threat and experience defense reactions due to trauma, purpose in life gets disabled, as well as our capacity to co-regulate. So through the study of trauma, we see the unfolding or the peeling off of the fabric of what it is to be this wonderful species, to be a human. And so if we understood this, we understood what our body is doing, and understood that we could create context and social context and physical context to give our nervous system cues, our neuroception cues of safety, we would become this cooperative, connected, expansive, creative, and loving species.
And that could be so amazing. That's really my hope and desire. And also, I remember, it's just beautiful what you say. And yesterday with Sue, she talks also, and I put it in these words, but she was saying that we need to like dive in our humanity, in our fear, just to elevate to our more essential or more true self.
Right. There's a paradox here, because when people want to transform and be transcendent and be very, spiritual or special, they often try very hard. And that trying is recruiting some of the same strategies that defense does. So we have to basically be more empowering and respectful and honoring of our body, that when our body's calm and safe, we can do lots of wonderful things, including how we react to others and how we have our own personal journey.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for saying that. And that's exactly the message that we want to give people through this series, that the goal is to be your true self. And the only way to do that is to be kind with yourself and really be with whatever fear or emotion or situation that you are in at the moment.
To be kind with oneself really requires an understanding of what it is that your body needs. And in many complex ways that can be simplified, polyvagal theory is kind of a map of what our body needs. And our body needs cues of safety. We need to trust. And when that occurs, it not only helps our sense of who we are, our experience of how we live our lives, but it also enhances our health. Because the circuits that are involved in threat reactions, which are chronic, we call that stress or toxic stress, those cues that shift our body into those states of defense interfere with the body's own regulation of organs. So it's not merely co-regulating in social interaction, it's self-regulating of our bodily organs. So we start getting lots of diseases of the organs of the body.
That's amazing. So important, because for us, the first step for consciousness, of course, awareness and self-knowledge, but that include all this that you say, what we need and how we function in our biology.
Yeah. Well, the beauty of understanding what it is to be a human is that there's no distinction between our mental experiences and our physiological. We're wired together. We have functionally one nervous system, not a nervous system of the brain and another one of the body, but we have one nervous system in which our body is conveying information to our brain saying, hey, you're safe, you're comfortable, don't worry about me. Now do the creative things you want to do. But if the body is under threat, which is either called, from external cues or even disease, the information that the body is sending up to the brain tells the brain something's not right here. So there's no distinction between mental and physical health. It's a bidirectional pathway. And the vagus, which is part of this whole theoretical perspective, is this major bidirectional highway sending cues from the body to the brain and from the brain back to the body. So we have to think of it as our surveillance system of our visceral organs is the vagus, but the vagus also is a regulator of how those organs are working. So when we're in safe states, then our body can do what it's supposed to do, take good care of our organs as well.
That I think it's genius that how you make this connection between our bodies and our social states, and it's something that we can see very clearly now, not just with the COVID, not just with the virus, but also with all this social situation now in the States.
But we're going to see some things as the pandemic dissipates or let's hopefully get a vaccine, there's going to be another type of pandemic, and that is the effect of the social isolation, the effect of the increased stresses for financial security, and also the impact of self-quarantine, where family units or spouses and their are in environments with each other, and they never really got along well in the first place. They were toxic to begin with. So now you have, in a sense, a lockdown of toxic interactions. And we're going to see the impact of that over the next couple of years as this unfolds. And so we need to understand that the way to remedy this is through cues of safety. And so people who who may have experienced it during the pandemic are going to have to look towards rehabilitation in a way of turning off their threat systems so that they can then be safe in the arms of others.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much. So I think we cover everything that I have, but I would like to know if there's something that you want to really say or something else that you just want to share.
Well, okay. What I like to say, and this is a restatement of some of the earlier points, is that we are both a traumatized species, but at the core, we are a loving, trusting species. And when we get into states of loving and trust and feel calm and safe, then our mental experiences can go anywhere. So we can be extremely creative. We can take on difficult problems. And if we want to travel in a spiritual realm, it's there for us as well. So we, in a sense, expand what it is to be a human, if and only if our bodies feel sufficiently safe to convey those cues to these newer portions of our brain that enable us to have these experiences of consciousness.
That's so amazing, so beautiful. Thank you so much. I'm just like, it's such, I feel like I'm able to be talking with you right now.
Well, it's just, you're pulling it out, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here with us today. Now go to my website, LK Intelligent Movement, where you can grab a lot of free resources to self-regulate your nervous system, improve your posture, and of course, be more aware. Thank you so much, and see you next time.